There are three ways to grow your business. Welcome back to another episode of Build with a Plan with Coach David here. I put on this podcast to hopefully help the business owners out there that are looking to take their business to the next level. And hopefully you're gaining some insights and avoiding some of the pitfalls and some of the prices that I paid when I was growing my business. Today we're going to talk about three ways to grow your business. There's growth, just straight up growth. There's scale, and there's acquire a business. Which is the best for you? Well, let's define what I mean by those three. There's growth, right? So there's the cost of goods sold, or the COGS, right? That's the material, the time, and all that it costs to produce that product or service. So that rises at the same rate as the growth. As in, the more clients that you get, the more, what it costs you to produce that product or service is the same. So therefore, your profit margin doesn't actually grow, it stays the same. Yes, at the end of the day, your profit will be higher, but the profit margin will stay the same because your COGS and your growth move at the same rate. Now that's growth, right? Now scale is is a bit different. Scaling means that your cost of goods don't rise at the same rate as your growth in clients, which means that your profit margin grows exponentially based on that. And that's where, most people want to say that they're scaling their business, but they're really only growing their business because they have to be very aware of what does your COGS, what does your cost of goods sold do when you acquire more clients. And acquire means that you actually either merge or you outright acquire another business. And that business could be a competitor of yours, it could be a complementary business to what you're doing, or it could be an entirely new aspect to your business, a new service or a new product. And as I was saying, most people say that they're actually scaling their business, but they're really only growing their business. Now you take an electrician, anybody that is a trade. Typically what happens is the more clients you get, the more trained staff you need to have, the more vehicles you need on the road. So therefore, your cost to deliver that service goes up at the same rate as acquisition of clients. Now, a good way to look at scale is typically software. Now, the great examples of those are pick your favorite social media platform out there. They have acquired millions of users, but they didn't have to. Their cost to deliver that product did not change. And that's why the subscription model for all these softwares out there, whether it's Canva, any one of those types of software out there, that you don't need to take on as many staff as you acquire new clients. Now you may need to grow your team a little bit, but it doesn't grow at the same rate as your growth of acquisition of new clients. Now, other ways that you can scale that if you're not in the software business is introducing new processes, right? AI now is coming on board, and that can help with some of these processes. It could speed up or help you skip a few steps, therefore not requiring you to take as much time to move people to different processes. Or you could look at new and improved equipment. You could look at, if you're producing something, is there equipment that can do more than what you currently have? And obviously maximizing the entire process, from your sales process to your manufacturing process to your completion, your sales, or so your invoicing, all of that. That's what you need to look at if you want to scale the business, right? Now, think about this as well. When you want to grow your business or scale your business, you need to have a predictable sales funnel. That's the only way you can actually acquire more clients, is if you have a predictable sales funnel set up. That's part of the processes that we talked about. It needs to be effective, and you need to be able to produce on that. You need to generate the leads, you need to be able to convert the leads, and then you need to be able to fulfill on whatever it is that you're doing. Plus, then you need to be able to either get paid up front or make sure that you get paid at the end. Now, if you were to go the acquire route, then it's a little bit different, because you actually can both grow and scale, but you also have an immediate influx of new clients that you can add to your business. Now, that's where the cross-selling comes in, or the upselling, and that's why it's kind of favorable. And when I was talking about the growth and the scale when you acquire, now again, it depends on what type of business that you are acquiring. Is it competition? Competition, obviously, if you're buying competition, then there's going to be overlap, duplicity in your processes or even your roles in your organization. So you'll be able to, reorganize both businesses, and then you'll be able to actually scale a bit that way. But also, now you're looking, that's the scale part of it, but also the growth part, right? You are going to take on more staff. You're going to take on potentially another location or other equipment that you need to look at, and therefore your cost of goods sold and your customer relation, or the amount of clients that you get, that gap isn't as big if you were just to simply scale. Now, all require an investment, but they're different for each. So when we look at the growth, okay, you're looking at, more or less, you're looking at that marketing, you're going to spend an ad spend, but then you also have to look at, do I need to hire more people? Now, again, if you're a tradesperson or someone that is in the home services business, or in the health services business, do you need to hire more staff? Do you need to buy more equipment? So that's what you're looking at. You've got your sales, then you've got to look for fulfillment, right? And also, are you building up that sales team? Are you needing to add to your sales team for that growth? Now, when you're scaling, again, you might be investing in technology. You might be investing in some new equipment. So that you have to look at it, but you also, again, you need to have that predictable sales funnel set up so that you can make sure that you are bringing in new clients so that you can, grow that way. And again, remember, your profit margin is much better growth when you are scaling. And then when you acquire, obviously you need to be looking at actually purchasing that business. Now, there's a few ways to do that. There's the vendor financing. There is just outright, if there's the cash flow in your business, then you could look at borrowing, or if there's enough profit in the bank, depending on the business, you could, obviously depends on the size of the business, do you just buy it outright? Clearly the big players out in the market, they look at acquiring, because they've already maxed out on their sales. Their marketing is out there. So how they look at actually growing the profit, and you got to remember the big boys out there, they're looking at the profit, the bottom line. So if you're in a position now that you want to grow your business, you want to increase the profit. Ideally, what you want to do is you want to increase the profit margin. So growth, just straight up growth, is not necessarily the best. Yes, at the end of the day, there could be more profit in your bank account, but the profit margin is more or less going to stay the same. So you want to look at increasing that profit margin. So therefore scaling your business, looking at what can you do differently in your business. Can you add some software? Can you add new processes? Can you add new equipment? What can you maximize? Because remember, at the bottom, at the end of the day, you are looking at wanting to increase your profit margin. So that way, when you actually acquire more clients, not only are you going to have more profit, but your profit margin is going to be bigger. And then again, are you in a position to acquire? Now, usually when you're acquiring and you acquire for the competition, that's where you can maximize the staff, the processes. Get rid of any of the duplicity and any of the redundancies, and then that's where you immediately start seeing more profit margin. So which is the best for you? Well, it really depends on where you want to go with your business. If you're looking at wanting to make sure that you have long-term success, again, you want to make sure that you're looking at your profit margin. And don't get me wrong, you can grow your business. You can keep the profit margin more or less the same as long as it's a healthy profit margin to begin with. Then that's what you're going to look at. But you should always be looking at and being mindful of what can I do to even get a 0.5% or a full percent more on your profit margin. That's how you can be successful. That gives you the opportunity to do more with your business. So think about it. You can either grow your business, scale your business, or acquire a business. Which is best for you? Again, depends on where you want to go with your business. All right, so that concludes this part of the podcast. Just wanted to shout out there if you have any questions that you want me to talk about on the podcast, on a future podcast, please reach out, send a message through the however you've got this podcast. You can reach me on LinkedIn. It's David Pataki. You can go to yourfsmatrix.com, reach me that way. Love to chat and answer any of your questions. And perhaps we could connect and we could do an interview. Anyways, this is Coach David here with Your FS Matrix. This podcast is built with a plan because I want to make sure that you're building the right way. Until next time, Coach David out.